Okay, now let's see. Are we live? Do I see any people there? Um, Hello? Nobody there? Boy. Okay, well, just in case anyone is still there, I want to apologize for the technical problems this morning. Normally, I would see if we have a number of people watching. I don't seem to see anyone. So here, what happened was I connected my iPad via QuickTime Player to my computer, and I was going to show you what I do, but that seemed to freeze this Google Hangout in some way. And but if some people would ask a question or comment, just to let me know if anyone is still out there. So then I decided to relaunch my Google Hangout meeting here, but it would simply not come alive. So there were lots of back and forth, and finally I created a new broadcast. So all of this took 5, 6, 7 minutes. I don't know if I still have anyone listening at this point. I apologize for the confusion. Anyone out there? I don't know. I'm not going to talk. Well, I might still have a little chat here because this will still go up on YouTube for people to view later on. So the intention today was to show you how I use my iPad to study at Link and to do some studying with my iPad. But I'm not going to attempt it now because I'm afraid it'll shut things down. So I'm going to save that for another occasion once I've worked out all the technical glitches. So what I want to do today is to show you some things that relate to studying Farsi, but they're not limited to studying Farsi, and they affect basically anything that we want to do in the language. So now I'm going to share my screen as I've done in the past. Again, I apologize for the delay getting started, and we got to learn these things. There's a lot of trial and error in all of this stuff. So screen share, and we're going to go here, desktop 2, start screen share. So hopefully you're looking at my Farsi page. All right. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is, so here we see, and so I was going to demonstrate what I do with Farsi. Farsi is one of the languages for which we don't have text-to-speech. Now, I just wanted to, before going any further, talk a bit about text-to-speech. I do get some comments here from sort of purists saying the Arabic text-to-speech pronunciation is not good, please ignore it, and stuff like that. I find the text-to-speech very useful. I realize that it is not always accurate. In fact, it might often not be quite accurate. Given that I listen to the content, the natural voice, 20, 30, 40 times, 50 times in some cases, the text-to-speech is not going to corrupt my sense of accurate pronunciation. It's very useful to get a sense of a new word, of how it's pronounced, even if it's a little bit inaccurate. And this brings me to, I think, a very important point in language training, which I cannot stress enough. One little incident, one text-to-speech pronunciation of a word which is off, one little error in a text, one mistake that you made or make, any little incident is relatively insignificant. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because in the course of my learning Arabic, or you're learning Spanish or Chinese, you should be exposed to so much content that one little grain of sand that's out of place is not going to have any major impact. It's far more important to charge ahead, exposing yourself to as much of the language as possible. Some people will have funny accents. Some people will use the language in a strange way, but it'll all cancel itself out if you do enough listening and reading. So, and I should point out too that even when you have trouble speaking, as I had, I think I did better in my second session in Arabic than in the first. It doesn't matter, because the learning we do, obviously we would like to do well. We always would like to do well. But the main thing is to improve our comprehension. And I find now in Farsi, as I'm able to go through these texts, read them and understand them, I have a tremendous sense of power. A sense of power that comes from feeling that we are gaining on the language. And once I have a sufficient level of comprehension that I can listen to all kinds of interesting content, compelling content, things of interest to me, I will progress in the language, and eventually I will be able to speak well. And so the amount of times that I fall flat on my face at an early or even intermediate stage in the language, or even subsequently when I feel I already speak the language well, but still make mistakes with some of the most basic issues in the language, none of this matters. And certainly the slightly strange text-to-speech in Arabic doesn't matter. Okay, I just wanted to get that off my chest, because there are a number of comments along those lines on my YouTube channel. So with Farsi, I have my easy content, like Who is She, which is a little more difficult than the mini stories. I review my conversation reports, which is, again, very useful, because this is content that's live for me, because it's stuff that I've tried to say. My tutor, Rana, has created an even easier version of the mini stories, her mini stories, which I used at the beginning. They're quite easy. And I have Persian Online. So I just wanted to show you where Persian Online comes from, because every language that I have learned, Romanian, Czech, Polish, if you look enough, and maybe you have to look in the language, you can find content online. So Persian Online is this tremendous source, which has beginner lessons, elementary lessons, and intermediate lessons. And in the case, let's take the elementary, which is where I'm spending most of my time now. You know, they have they have the text, translation, glossary, dialogue 1, dialogue 2. So what I typically do is I go into the Persian text here, and then I highlight the whole text. And it's a little tricky doing it with sort of Arabic and Farsi, because it goes from right to left. And then I copy that. And then I go to, I'm not going to do it the whole way through because I already have it, but I go then to my Farsi. I click here, import the lesson. All right. And I go to the course, which in this case would be Persian Online. This was Persian Online 2. And I select that. I paste the lesson here. I put a title up here. And then I also download, there was an audio file here. Oh, I'll just let that ring. That's the problem of having the iPad beside me. So, shush. Hello. Goodbye. Okay. So here's the audio. A lot of times with the audio, it's save link as. Enables you to download the MP3 file. I have downloaded some, as you can see in the bottom of my screen here. This then, when I am in my, where are we here? There, you upload the audio file, you click on that, it'll go to your to my desktop or wherever I have that file. And so then I add the audio, and then I have a lesson. And if I wanted to, I could put, you know, the translation in here. They have a glossary, I could add that as lesson notes. So this is how I build up content once I am beyond you know, what's in our library at Link. So if I go to my Persian Online 2, which is sort of the intermediate level, Persian Online 3 is, I've already started some of them, which are really fun because they're talking about Iran, they're talking about Persepolis, they're talking about famous figures from Persian history. And so that's really interesting stuff, more difficult. And so I kind of go back and forth between the very easy and the less easy. So if I go here and open up Persian Online 2, so there's a lot of stuff here. I think I was doing this one here just now. So it's exciting to me that I'm actually able to read this and I listen to it and I can make sense of most of it. And earlier on, I would mostly go in sentence mode, but now I go in full text mode. And I've already been through on the computer how I save phrases, so I'm not going to do that again. Or how I review links. So none of that is, I was hoping to do that on the iPad to show you, but I can't. So maybe before going any further, I should turn it over to you. If there's any particular questions you have or things that you would like me to review, obviously I should point out that my tutor, Rana here, so she's my tutor, she's excellent. Boy, I haven't tried him at $4 an hour. I might go and see if he's available. These are the two tutors we have. I can check my activities here and I can see that this is where I line up my tutors. And, but anyway, enough of that. Let's get back to my lessons and ask you if, and this, of course, pretty soon I'm going to be going into the sort of news items that we scrape. But yeah, so let's go back to my lessons and questions. So let us see here. What have we got? Let me open up Slack. So people, let's go to where are we here? 90-day challenge. I'm reading this. Okay. What is the next language you're going to study after Farsi and Arabic? Probably Turkish. And, I'm at a stage where I can study whatever I want. I don't write exams. I do what interests me. So I have, I had my sort of Romance language period. I had my Asian language period. I had my Slavic language period. And right now in my mind, I'm exploring the world of the Middle East, Central Asia. And there is tremendous cultural sort of connection between Arabic, Farsi, and Turkish. Certainly there are many recognizable Arabic words in Farsi. I am told the same is true in Turkish. There are connections in terms of food, music, history, obviously the religion, and there were many, the Persian Empire included Arabic lands, the Arab, Islamic world grew to include Turkey and Iran. The Ottoman Empire included Turkish and obviously Turkish and then Arabic and Farsi speaking people. And so to me, it's just an interesting thing to explore. So I'm definitely going to go to Turkish next. The next question is, how long have you been studying Arabic? I would say a little over a year. But in that period, I spent a month traveling in Latin America. I spent a month traveling. I can't remember. We were, so there's months of time in there where I'm not at the Arabic. But for a year, it has been the language that I'm working on. So when I have an opportunity, it might average to an hour or so a day. But now that I'm on the 90-day challenge, it's more than that. Because I think I'm spending more than 2 hours a day, except I'm spending the first 3 days of the week with Arabic and the second 3 days of the week with Farsi. And that's the answer to that question. Any other questions here before I continue? No. Okay. So, if I were on my own here, if like the idea is that we're studying together, I would open my Persian online, except I would do it on my iPad. And so I'm right now at lesson 30 here. or 31 rather, practice. So I would open up that. I've listened to it. I was listening to it this morning as I was making breakfast. And there were words in there that I wasn't totally sure of. So I would go and Emruz Shombe ast. It's Saturday. Man u barodaram Shombe ho ro kheli dust doram. So yeah, I know all of those are fine. I'm doing fine. We like Saturdays. Zori mi tavonim. We are able to be bosh go. So here, Boshko Varzesh is a sports club, but I might want to save that. All right. And so what I would do is simply, even though I've been through it once, I kind of understand it. I'd go through it again and try and rework some of these words. Bear in mind, I think this is another important point. You know, we have a limited amount of time to spend on the language. So sometimes we're inclined to want to try to nail down the vocabulary. No matter how much we nail it down, we'll forget it again. So we have to be realistic about how much nailing down we do. I'm not sure in my mind whether by proceeding and doing more content, because even in going to new content, you're seeing old friends again, whether I'm better off to go forward or whether I'm better off to try and concentrate on a few words. I tend to feel that at the early stage, I tend to more want to nail things down just so that I can, otherwise it's too difficult to read new material. But eventually I kind of get more and more extensive as I go along. I don't know what that was. Okay, a couple of questions here. What was the most difficult Romance language for you? Yeah, hard to say. I would say obviously the first Romance language was French, and I spent more time on French than any other. And after that, it's kind of all the same. I mean, in a way, Romanian should be the most difficult because it has funny little case endings, and it has 25% or 20% Slavic words and 5-10% words that predate, in other words, from the sort of, call it Dalmatian or whatever, original Romanian. But actually, by that time, I had done so many Romance languages that I found Romanian quite easy. So I don't think there's any difference. What is the best approach for looking up words I don't know when reading? Should I skim the sentence first and look up the words before I read and listen, or should I read and listen first and then look up? Very interesting question. So I'm assuming that you're working on link. If I'm reading a book away from the computer, I simply don't look words up in a dictionary because my experience has shown me that I forget them. It's very frustrating. It's very time consuming. It destroys the pleasure of reading. So if I don't have enough vocabulary to read the book, in other words, to make sense of it, even allowing for words that I don't understand, if I can't do that, I don't read away from the computer. So I'm reading on the computer. So in a way, if you listen first, I would say at the very beginning, you kind of have to read first or you don't have a clue. But it almost doesn't matter. Sometimes I read first to get a bit of rhythm, a bit of momentum, and I build up curiosity. Curiosity is so important. Once you're curious now, you heard all the sound, you don't know what it means. So now I'm curious, so I want to get in there and find out what it means. So I tend to, so in that case, you listen first and then you read. But I have also, in many cases, read first. And obviously, when I read, I'm looking up every word. I look up every word, even words that I kind of think I know, I look them up. And I save them as links. Unless I'm really sure that I know them, then I won't save them as links. Because there's no harm in saving them as links. There's also no harm in not saving them and having them count as known, because if you see them again and don't know what they mean, then you save them again and the statistics adjust. So insofar as skimming the first sentence first, I don't do that. What I often do, and I will show you that sometime, is I'll go through and I'll just go from blue word to blue word. And so convert them all to yellow. and then I read again, looking up the yellow words, because I just find it psychologically pleasing to see my page at link get lighter and lighter, more yellow, more white. And then I go through and I again check the yellow words. So, or should I read and listen first and then look up? No, I look them up as I go. And then I go away and I listen and I don't understand and then I read again. But then eventually, as you get better, of course, you don't have to repeat so often because there's only a few words that you missed. You look them up, you may forget them again, but you have enough of a sense in order to make your way through the text. Okay, do you write out anything by hand? No, I don't. However, if I were, studying in a classroom, I would. When I was learning Chinese and I had to write an exam at the end, I wrote. So I think writing is very important, but I am sort of a dilettante. But if I were in a classroom, I would write. I think writing is very, very good. But I can't, I lived in Japan for 9 years, did business in Japanese. I can type in Japanese. I can't write by hand in Japanese. I never write by hand in Japanese. I don't write by hand in Russian, not to mention Greek. I have no intention of writing by hand in Arabic or Farsi. But that's me where I am. If I were in a formal learning environment, I would probably write. Okay, have you ever been in Arabia? Why you want to learn the Arabic language? Okay, I have been to 2 Arabic countries. I've been to Jordan briefly. When my wife and I we visited Crete, Israel, and then we went into Jordan and went to Petra. It was a wonderful experience. At that time, I didn't speak any Arabic. I can tie that into the next question about revisiting Hebrew. Before going to Israel, I spent a few weeks or maybe a month trying to learn some Hebrew. I didn't get enough to be able to use it. I spoke mostly English, French, and Russian in Israel. But then when I went into Jordan, I enjoyed it, and I thought to myself, there's 300-400 million people who speak Arabic, and there's probably 10 or so million who speak Hebrew. Therefore, I would rather learn Arabic. However, I would like to revisit Hebrew. And getting back to the reasons for learning Arabic, it's a very important language, world language. It's a major world culture. If we look at history, Arabic, Farsi, and also Hebrew and Greek have had major impacts on world history. So I enjoy learning languages for cultural reasons because I'm interested in history. And so that was my reason for learning Arabic. And of course, I do want to travel to more Arabic countries. I was in Morocco with my wife for 5 days. And while they don't speak Fusha as the sort of standard vernacular there, I was able to speak Fusha with my taxi drivers, with people in restaurants. And it was a very pleasant experience. And I got a very positive reaction from people, even by being able to say a few words in Fusha. So that covers those 2. D, did you start with learning the alphabet first with Iranian to be able to read the content? I said to myself, if I'm going to go to the trouble of learning Arabic and learning the Arabic writing system, then I should kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak, and also go after Farsi. And so therefore, when I started, and the other thing was, Farsi is easier to read than Arabic. The writing system is more consistent. So by getting into Farsi and then kind of speeding up my reading, I feel this has also helped me in reading Arabic. Okay, next question. I have the feeling that I have to be advanced in my current target language in order to start learning a new one. What would you say that? I cannot reach advanced language, so I can't start a new one. It depends what your goals are. I learned Romanian because I was going to be in Romania for a week. I learned Greek in order to be able to say some things when we were visiting Crete. I can always go back to them. I had a specific goal and reason for learning them. I have a sense of those languages. I have a base where I can go back to them. But then I was motivated to learn Arabic. I was briefly motivated to learn Hebrew and then decided to move on to Arabic. I haven't lost what I've done in Hebrew. I can always go back to it. So to me, it's a matter of what you want to do. And whatever you put into a language, it's not lost. And if all of a sudden the motivation is stronger to learn another language, then why not do that? Unless you have a professional or some other reason for wanting to achieve an even higher level in the first language. Here, I have about 7,000 known words on LingQ and about 20,000 links so far in Spanish. I have done very little concerning grammar, but I think I need it now. Do you have thoughts on proceeding? Okay. Grammar. We do need occasionally to refer to grammar. The best time to refer to grammar, in my opinion, is when you are genuinely curious about how certain things work. So once you have 7,000 known words, you have been exposed to enough of the language so that, the grammar explanations make sense, which is important. I'm going to stop the screen sharing here. So that the grammar explanations make sense. And that's why while you're studying, now we have at LingQ, for example, when you save a word, there is the opportunity to tag it for a certain grammar feature. Very often there are conjugating dictionaries, for example. So I find it very useful when I look up a verb and I go to Context Reverso or one of these conjugating dictionaries, Conjugator, and I look up and I quickly review the conjugation. Not with the intention of being able or the expectation of being able to remember anything, but it's just another form of exposure to the language. And I find this useful. And so that, the whole business of learning a language is a bit like a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. And the picture gradually becomes clearer. Gradually becomes clearer as we acquire more words, as we're more used to reading in the language, as we're more used to sort of seeing meaning immediately without having to go through our own language. Certain structures seem natural to us, and so we're getting a sense naturally of the grammar, but also looking up the grammar explanation, reviewing the conjugation tables, declension tables, some explanations. It's all part of making the picture clearer. So I definitely, my beef with grammar instruction is that they start it from the beginning when you have no exposure to the language, and the assumption is that some kind of explanation and a few drills are going to enable you to function correctly in the language. I don't believe that's the case. I believe that we learn much more naturally, the way, from an evolutionary perspective, we just pick things up, so the brain responds to the experience with the language. And then the explanations can help. They're part of the picture. And especially if we are curious, we want to know. It's not an explanation that's sort of imposed on us, but it's something that we want to understand better. And in that way, it's going to stick with us. I have close to 10,000 words in French. Where am I on the hockey stick? All right. Of course, I have this vision of the upside down hockey stick where at an early stage, we're listening repeatedly, we're rereading, we're perhaps reviewing more words and phrases, trying to get a handle on the language. That's the steep sort of initial climb. And then we're on that long, long road of acquiring more and more words, listening to more and more hopefully interesting content. It might be movies that you find on YouTube and you can import into LingQ, for example. So at 10,000 known words in French, I think you are at an early stage on that hockey stick. You're past the initial steep climb, and you might be 1/3 of the way along, because the words that you now have to acquire are the less frequent words. Less frequent, but very important in a particular context. And because they're less frequent, you don't come across them as often. And so they're more difficult to acquire. And so therefore, it's a long, long road. But it's got to be an enjoyable road. So if you're listening to stuff that you like, it could be, movies, it could be song, it could be literature, it could be history, it could be something that relates to your work. You're now at the stage where you're not so deliberately learning the language, but you're actually enjoying the language and in that way gradually acquiring it. But at 10,000 words, I would think you're about 1/3 of the way along. Mind you, it's an endless hockey stick, all right? You cannot learn. The native speaker of that language that has lived in that language since they were a child, they're going to always have more vocabulary, even passive vocabulary, than you have. Or not always, but in most cases. So it's a long road, but If you enjoy it, it doesn't matter. You're having fun. So, do you have dreams in English or another? I often get that question. Other languages do appear in my dreams. To the extent that I'm aware of the language that I'm dreaming in, I know that sometimes I dream that I'm traveling in Japan or something, so I'm speaking Japanese or French or whatever. I guess it's mostly in English. All right. I guess that's it. We ran over. I apologize for the technical glitch at the beginning. I'm going to work this out, and if I can get the iPad to work with my computer and to have our Google Hangouts on, then I will show you how I work on the iPad, because actually I do more of my linking activity on the iPad than on the computer, because it's just so much more convenient to me. Now, other people prefer to do it on the computer. All right, then. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.